Hi, everybody, John McLaughlin, and it is time once again for Warrior Wednesday. And today we're going to talk once again, I know you're probably getting tired of it, but about pepper spray. But today we're going to hear from a woman in Hawaii who used this to help defend her family. All right, welcome back, everyone. Joining us all the way across the Pacific is Soleil Roache, and she is a pepper spray instructor right now through the same certification that I did with the legendary lawman Chuck Haggard from Topeka with his Agile Training and Consulting Group. And I know you were a huge proponent of pepper spray even before this. You're teaching this to folks now in Hawaii where it's easier to teach pepper spray than firearms. We'll talk more about that in a moment. But I want you, if you can, and just be as real as possible, tell me about the event that you had back in 2020, just a few months after you took your initial class to learn about using pepper spray.
So back in 2019, I had taken Chuck Haggard's pepper spray class. He taught it after the ASP National Conference. I took that class and it was amazing. I learned a ton. I had already been carrying pepper spray for years before that, just because in Hawaii, we're not allowed to carry firearms for self-protection in public. So my weapon of choice, if you will, was pepper spray. I also carry defensive knives, and we can talk about that later if you want. But I had carried pepper spray for years, and so I thought it might be a good idea to take a class, you know, to get more educated about it. And then 5 months after that class, I was attacked. I was walking down the road with 2 children. We were at a church event and we were handing out flyers to people in the public just to invite them to come over and participate. And we were walking down the road and there was a man in the community. He's really well known. Everybody is very familiar with him and how he behaves. He's one of the regulars that always gets, you always see him on the side of the road with the cops or the fire department. They're responding to some kind of complaint about him. He has a reputation of being very aggressive. Sometimes he's really good when he's on his meds or, you know, when he's not experiencing some kind of mental, what do you call it?
Hallucination?
But yeah, he has a lot of challenges and stuff. But that particular day, he was markedly more aggravated than usual. I found out later it was because the cops had confiscated his bicycle that morning. So he was really, really mad. So anyway, the kids and I were handing out flyers. We noticed him off in the parking lot along the street we were walking on. And of course, I told the kids, we're not going to go hand him a flyer. We're just going to keep on going. Right. So we handed all our flyers out and we were on our way back up the road to the church because it was almost time for the event to start. And instead of being off in the corner of the parking lot, he was on the sidewalk and he was in the road. He was like hitting cars as they were driving by. He was, you know, being verbally aggressive and physically aggressive, like saber rattling, challenging people to fight and stuff. And so we were pretty close to the corner. I stopped the kids and we're just like observing him. And I told him, we're not going to go this way. We're going to cross the street and go on the other side of the street and walk up and then cross back over to our church. And so as we were waiting for a break in traffic to cross the street, I had been keeping an eye on him and I told my son because my oldest son, we allow him to carry pepper spray. Right. And so I told him to just get it out and hold it in his hand because that's something that I do regularly. If while I'm loading groceries and I have to have my back to the parking lot or I'm buckling in my youngest daughter to her car seat, I just have it in my hand so that while I don't have my attention, you know, at 100% of what's going on around me, I regularly just take it out and I have it in my hand. So we noticed him there, had our pepper spray in our hand, and he was a good 100 yards away from us or so at this point. So we had good distance and I wasn't really worried about him, but then his focus changed from traffic and everything, and he locked onto my son. And so he started verbally attacking my son and marching straight at us, right down the sidewalk, eyes locked on my son. And, you know, for a split second, I was like, this isn't happening. And then, like, you know, we talk about on active self-protection, radically accepting reality. Like it was literally like a 10th of a second, like this is not happening, this is happening. And so switch gears, and first I started shouting out some verbal commands for him to stop and back up and to get away from us. And he was not even there. It was like I wasn't even standing there. He couldn't hear me. He didn't respond. He didn't acknowledge that I was there. He was just locked onto my son. And so once he got within range of my pepper spray, because I had practiced with my pepper spray, I knew how far it would shoot. Once he was within range, I just hosed him down right across the eyes. Like initially it caught him right here. I saw it hit his face, and I just went zip, zip, zip right across his eyes. And immediately he stopped in his tracks, and his hands went to his face, and he turned away from us, and he was trying to wipe it off, but really he was just wiping it in. But it achieved what I wanted. It made him stop, and that was my goal, to make him stop. And it was just a textbook case of pepper spray working the way we wanted to. He stumbled away, and he was still screaming and yelling and swearing and all of that, but he wasn't approaching us anymore. And so we got out. I took out my phone and started recording, just in case he started coming at us again. And we called 911. It took the cops about a little more than 5 minutes to show up. There's a police station like not even a quarter mile away. It took them a while to show up. And as soon as I described him to the dispatcher, they knew exactly who I was talking about. They were very familiar with him. So when the cops came, they didn't really ask me why I pepper sprayed him. They kind of knew how he behaved and stuff. So I just did a written statement, but I didn't press any charges because he never made, physical contact with us or anything. He didn't hurt us, just scared us and stuff.
So let's talk about Chuck's training a little bit in the pepper spray class. The first thing Chuck talks about is the pre-muck, pre-managing unknown contacts, identifying something that's not right out at a distance. And you obviously did that. You talked about, all the way out at 100 yards or so, that this, as Chuck says, SH something T doesn't look right.
That don't look right. Right. And so a lot of that is just what we talk about on active self-protection, is paying attention to your world, not having your face in your phone, just being aware of what's going on around you, not being paranoid, but just like John Korea always says, being curious about what's happening in your world. And so when you do that, you're able to recognize things that shouldn't be going on, just things that pique your creep alarm or whatever you want to call it. The gift of fear, when the little hair starts standing up, you need to trust that. So once you recognize, okay, the attack is on, you talked about just that fraction of a second being stuck in the normalcy bias, like, this can't be happening. And do you think all the training you've done, defensive training, handgun training, helped break you out of that pretty quick compared to some folks that just kind of lock there and freeze and can't do anything? Absolutely. Before any of this, I have about 8 years or so of martial arts training and stuff under my belt, and my instructor, like more than the physical stuff that we learned, all the blocking and punching and kicking and all of that, the most valuable thing I ever got from all that training was the mentality of that I am worth protecting, that the mentality of never giving up, never stopping. If you're coherent and you can move, you can still do something to make yourself safer, or to injure the other person first, to get out of the situation. So I think all of that training helped me mentally to make that gear switch in that split second. Like, okay, this is happening. I need to do something to make it stop.
Talked about, you had the added variable of having your son and one other child with you. Talk about the additional stress that put on you.
In the moment, I was aware that they were there. I remember as he was approaching us, I remember we backed up a little, but then I planted my back foot. I remember just like setting my back foot and mentally thinking, I'm not moving any further. You're going to have to go through me to get to these kids, especially my son, because he was the one that his focus was on. But I remember the other girl that was with us, she was young. She was 5 at the time. So of course she was freaked out, but she didn't make a peep the whole time. She didn't scream, nothing. She just stayed right behind me on my hip. But it, yeah, in the moment, I wasn't focused on them. I was more focused on stopping him. I think a lot of that goes back to my training. Like you see people, like for example, in dog attacks, instead of going after the dog, people will grab their child and start pulling the child away instead of going after the dog. So yeah, it really helps to have some training under your belt.
Okay, the other thing I picked up from what you just said was you had practice with your pepper spray, and in the classes that we've both been in, I imagine we teach fairly similar. What the inert trainers is letting people know what that range is, how far it'll go out, you know, it's kind of that 10 to 12 foot maximum distance, the effects of wind, the effect of moving while you're spraying. Obviously that came into play because you knew when to deploy it and not to like start shooting well before he got to you.
Yeah, I literally, like when I first got my palm canister, because I had been carrying Saber Red up to I think about 2019 or 18, I forget exactly. But when I switched over to palm, I literally got the inert. I got a tape measure in my living room and I sprayed it, and then I went and felt the carpet to see how far, like it was wet. I measured it. So I know what, you know, this tool that I was going to carry, what it could do. And so I knew exactly how far it would spray. Also, when I sprayed the guy, I knew, because we have trade winds in Hawaii, the wind's almost always blowing in one direction, and the wind was to my back, so I knew it would go a little bit farther than the advertised 10 to 12 feet, and it did.
Now, this is an absolutely true story. I was helping a neighbor clean out their motorhome today because they're having to move into a different type of living. And as I was going through, I found a canister of, it was a Saber in the little pink breast cancer awareness package. And I thought, wow, this has been in here in a while. It was still in the package, but I went ahead and took my knife, I opened it up, and it was expired in 2016. And I had done a segment a couple weeks ago on our Iowa Firearms Coalition Facebook page on pepper spray that gets old and is it still good or not? And so I went outside and I shot that unit that had expired in 2016, went about 3 feet.
Yeah,
so that's something that Chuck talks about, you know, replace this once a year, just like you'd replace your ammo. It's so cheap for one of these palm canisters. Why not just get a new one every year on your birthday or whatever, and always know you've got something that's in your case going to be ready to go when you need it most.
Yep. Mine don't even make it a year. I hand out palm pepper sprays like candy. Like if I have, especially ladies, they come approach me and ask questions and stuff. I'm just like, here, take mine. And so I started carrying an extra in my purse because I was always giving away the one that I carry on my person. And then I would be without my palm until I got home to get another one to replace it. But yeah, I started carrying a spare one in my purse, like for that express purpose of just giving it away to people that need it, because they're so cheap.
Now let's role play a little bit. Let's say you didn't have your pepper spray, and from what I understand, carrying a firearm is pretty tough in Hawaii. And here's someone who's coming at you aggressive but unarmed. What would have happened if you didn't have this intermediate tool that we say, you know, between harsh words and a gun?
Yeah. So like I mentioned earlier, I do carry a defensive knife, a fixed blade. And as you and I both know, that would be deadly force, which is completely different from a pepper spray. The threshold, that's the great thing about pepper spray, is the threshold for using it justifiably is so low. Even if you sprayed somebody by accident, like if say you misinterpret the situation and you think someone's, you know, gonna attack you, but they're just, you know, running after someone behind you, or I don't know, make up whatever situation you want. But if you accidentally spray someone, it's the same as if you had pushed them or kicked them or slapped them. It's simple battery, I think Chuck said it's called. So it's not as high you know, people talk about a use of force spectrum,
Right.
whatever. It's
Yep.
it's not deadly force. It doesn't cause any permanent injury. It just causes pain
Right.
and suffering.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you know, if I had used a knife on the guy in the same instance that I used pepper spray, I would probably be in jail.
Right.
For assaulting him, because that would have been using deadly force on him in a situation. I don't think at the time it hadn't escalated to the place where deadly force was justifiable
Mhm.
or was needed. I do have martial arts background, but you know, against a bigger, stronger man who
Right.
is already highly adrenalized, I don't think that even with training, a woman my size would I would have definitely gotten hurt, you know,
Right.
but I don't even want to think about how that would have gone.
Right.
And with the kids around and everything, because I
Right.
don't know what he was capable. He didn't produce any weapons, which is good, but I don't know if he had anything on
Right.
him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a guessing game at that point, and I don't care if
Mhm.
you're a female, male.
Right.
I carry mine every single day
Yep.
because I don't want to have to pull my firearm out unless it's
Mhm.
absolutely kind of the tool of last resort. You know,
Mhm.
we had a horrible incident in the news recently with the Buffalo thing. Obviously, you know, pepper spray wouldn't have worked there, but it kind of gives you, like you said, the confidence of when you're coming out of the grocery store to have that in your hand, to
Right.
have the little cap flipped up, and you know you're
Mhm.
ready to go if you need it.
Mhm.
And one thing I just thought about recently is I talked to the company. I don't know what you use for your self defense insurance, but they said, you know, if you have to use that, don't worry about it because it's actually covered in your legal protection plan, the non-lethal tools as well as
Yeah.
the lethal tools. So that's something else good to think about.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I was sharing with someone online the other day, you know, as far as deadly force versus non-deadly force or non-lethal or less lethal.
Right.
Um, you know, with the situation that happened with me, you know, nobody, because I recognized it early and pepper spray worked effectively and it stopped his attack. Nobody went to jail. Nobody went to the hospital. Nobody went to the morgue, court. I didn't have to spend tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars on attorneys and
Right.
legal fees and court cases and hospital bills. It was
Right.
just a $13 canister of palm.
Right.
Totally worth it.
Did you continue on to your church event after that, or
Yeah. Yep. We went, and it's something that we do well, we haven't done it. This was before COVID. So
right?
after COVID, we stopped doing it because it wasn't allowed. But what we were doing at the time was just feeding the community. We would just, members of the church would fast, and
Mhm.
what we weren't spending on food for ourselves, we put aside, and we would just make a huge meal for the community. So we were inviting people to come eat. And so I did go to the event afterwards, and you know, adrenaline, I'm shaking
Right.
like crazy, and you know, and of course the parent of the other girl that was with me, we're trying
Right.
to, you know, explain things to her and calm her down and everything. But yeah, I went and we, you know, served food and prayed with people and all of that and helped break down. And then it didn't really hit me until I got home afterwards, and
Mhm.
like the adrenaline dump that people experience
Right.
after, you know,
Right.
a high stress situation. Then that hit me that evening.
Wow. Well, tell us a little about the state of concealed carry, getting a permit in Hawaii compared to what we have here on the mainland. I'm mainly from Iowa and then spend the winters in Arizona. Both states are, you know, big on freedom, big on Second
Yep.
Amendment, all kinds of good stuff happening in the legislatures. How is Hawaii now? Are they still like another country compared to the other states?
Pretty much the too long didn't read it shortened version of concealed carry in Hawaii is that we don't.
Mhm.
I was explaining earlier when we were talking that concealed carry permits on paper, we are a may issue state,
Mhm.
but what it actually is they don't ever issue concealed carry permits. The permits are issued at the sole discretion of the police chief,
Mhm.
and they just don't issue them at all. We haven't had a single concealed carry permit issued in decades. So unless you're a police officer or armed security, like an armored truck driver.
Right.
No one can carry a firearm, open or concealed carry, at all.
So you've got a group over there now called the Hawaii Firearms Coalition. And if our folks in Iowa can be of any help to you in talking about things we've done in the past, please let us know. But tell us a little bit about that group and what they're doing to start standing for freedom in Hawaii now.
Yeah, so it's a group of, actually, it started out as just 3 guys that founded it, that just wanted to organize people and educate people, and kind of get, teach people how to submit testimony, for example, when there was, because every single year we have dozens and dozens of anti-gun bills being proposed, and we don't even hear about it until it's already passed. People would complain afterwards. We would see it on the news, like, oh, this bill was passed, and everybody is like, how? We didn't even hear about it. And so Hawaii Firearms Coalition has been doing a lot of education, getting the word out, doing these blasts of, hey, this bill is coming down, we need you to submit testimony. So they've been really great about that. In up to about maybe 2 or 3 years ago, when these bills would come down, there would be maybe 5 or 10 testimonies submitted against them, and now we're having hundreds and hundreds of people submit testimony. And so the legislators are all of these people still had the same opinion back before. It's just they didn't know how to do any of this. So Hawaii Firearms Coalition has been doing a lot of education and training, and just getting the word out to people so that they know how they can make their voices heard. Excellent.
That's good to hear. Sometimes court pressure helps when you have anything like that going on there.
Definitely.
So what do you think the outlook is? How soon will Soleil be able to have a concealed carry permit, you think, in Hawaii, if you had to predict?
So I was actually just talking to my lawyer yesterday, because I don't know if you heard, in California, there was a ruling that came down about the age limit as far as issuing permits to adults. I think the age limit is 21, so they're trying to lower it, or the ruling said that it was unconstitutional. And so depending on how things go with that, because Hawaii is part of the 9th Circuit, with California and all that. So depending on the other Supreme Court case in New York that is also happening right now, depending on how that goes, and depending on how things go in the 9th Circuit, that will set precedents for Hawaii. And then our laws will have to change as a result, because we have to follow whatever the 9th Circuit Court is doing and the Supreme Court. So it's kind of up in the air. But my lawyer was mentioning probably within the next 3 months, they're expecting a decision as far as the Supreme Court case, which will affect Hawaii's open carry law.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your time. I appreciate your story. If we had to just, if you had 10 seconds to share with the men and women watching on the importance of pepper spray, what would your 10-second testimonial be?
I would say carry it. Everybody should carry it. As long as you're not legally prohibited from carrying it, there's no reason why everyone shouldn't carry a quality pepper spray, and make sure it's a quality pepper spray, because it's not regulated out there. I think I went over my 10 seconds already, but but yeah, it's something that's not regulated. So you need to do your shopping around and research and make sure that the pepper spray you are carrying is a good product.
Yep, and we all recommend this, Tom, and it's not because we're not getting a kickback or anything. It's because it's the highest concentration of the major capsaicinoids, and we know it works.
Yeah,
and the company, we trust it for friends and family.
Yeah, and the company is good people. We know the owner, Alex, and he does a lot of good, a lot of philanthropic work. So, and they have cute colors.
Yes.
All the girls like that.
Yeah, they got pink and white and black, and I like the tactical orange band. So there you go. Soleil Roache from Hawaii, thank you very much for joining us on our Warrior Wednesday program, and be safe out there, and hopefully soon you'll all enjoy some of the freedom that the rest of us do here in the middle of the country.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You bet. Take care and have a good afternoon.
You too.